Hey, everybody. Welcome to another great edition of the Bailey Pod on this brisk Thursday. Well, folks, we're on our way to the state semifinals this weekend, but so are the Nick 10 champs. The Belevidere North Blue Thunder are going to the state semifinals. They did it by going into Cary-Grove and walking out with a 17-10 victory over Cary-Grove. We'll discuss that game coming up in the show. We'll also discuss B North semifinal opponent, the St. Francis Spartans this weekend. Folks, this is going to be another hot show. Let's go ahead and get settled in. Grab a snack if you need to, because it's going to be that type of show. Let's get ready, folks, and let's get things moving. Let's get ready for the Bailey Pod. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another great edition of the Bailey Pod here on this Thursday. Before we actually dive into the show, as I do each and every week, as we bring you the Bailey Pod weekly, discussing Nick 10 teams and our playoff show. This is our third edition. I want to just go ahead and express my profuse thanks to those that have gone and subscribed and viewed, and you like the Bailey Pod. Definitely means a lot to me. Definitely means a lot to my contributors as well. Keep it coming, folks. We're going to keep on serving. So, again, my profuse thanks to those that have actually, again, gone and liked and subscribed to Bailey Pod. A couple reminders. Make sure you guys go follow, go like the Bailey Pod, and make sure you guys click that bell in the bottom right-hand corner so you can be notified for all new content that will be dropping throughout the week. Again, special thanks from me and my contributors here on the Bailey Pod. Folks, we saw a great one last week. We're going to go ahead and bring in the Bailey Pod contributor, Rockton Roscoe News, my main man, Harold Bone. Harold, what's happening, my man?
Tim, another week we get to talk about football, my man. You gotta love it. You gotta love it.
We are here.
Came in and they did what they did what they do, right? They played against the team exactly like themselves. And they showed everyone in the state, especially the broadcasters as I was watching it, hey, Nick 10 football.
Absolutely, yeah. And Harold, just to cap on what you just said in your intro, man, hey, they did what they're expected to do. Would you agree?
Hey, yeah, they're the only undefeated 5A team in the state of Illinois. The only one. There's only one, and that's Belevidere North. And they came in, they did what they had to do. And they moved on. And we'll talk about, the game last week.
Yep.
We'll talk about the one coming up. But tremendous performance. Man. Great job by Coach Beck and the entire team there. But, huge shout out to the fans there as well. They had a really nice turnout there that traveled over there.
Absolutely.
They're going to need that. They're going to need that this week for sure.
I would agree. I would definitely agree, Harold. Thursday, it's a little brisk out. We're expecting some really good weather this weekend. So hopefully, things go well in terms of the weather. So Belevidere North, they can come out and do their thing. Harold, we're going to go ahead and just get right into it, man. I mean, why waste time, right? Just looking at what Belevidere North was able to do against a really good team like Cary-Grove. Again, the score was 17-10. Belevidere North, we both watched the film. We weren't at the game present, but we both had a chance to get our naked eye on the film. Harold, as I sat and I watched the game, and I'm looking at Cary-Grove and I'm looking at Belevidere North, and first drive, Cary-Grove comes out, they march the ball downfield, they pick up some really good positive yards, they get down on the 9-yard line, and then they go to the bathroom on themselves, so to speak, and who capitalizes? Belevidere North. I think in terms of their defense played A1 lights out. I think you would agree. I think everybody in that stadium thought that may have been their best defensive performance all year. You held the big boy, the big running back, Abram, you held him to 136, 137 yards rushing, which is really, really good. Compared to some of the actual games big games that he's had prior to them actually losing to Belevidere North over the weekend. You just got to give kudos to, Coach Fagan and what he did, dialing up a good defense. And then also, too, all those 11 guys on defense, they did their job. They all had an assignment, and they all fulfilled that assignment. So, again, kudos to the defense. As it relates to offense, I think offense did what they needed to do. The big question going in, my big question is, can offense do a little bit more this weekend than they did last week? And they're facing a better opponent, I think, in St. Francis than they did in Cary-Grove, who they beat last week, 17-10. So I think going into this game this week, I think we're going to have to see a little bit more offense. I think defense is going to continue to step up and do what they did last week and do what they've pretty much been doing all year. That's just really coming up big when they need to come up big. But I think I need to see a little bit more from the ground game of Belevidere North. I think they only had 79 yards rushing. I believe Bucci had about 33 or 35 of those yards, if I'm correct. I think we're going to have to see a little bit more passing now going forward. I think they know now, they can pass. They're not a first pass team first, but I think they have the ability to actually implement that into this game this week in some type of offensive plays to where they can actually put the ball in the air, attack the perimeters of St. Francis, and maybe even stretch the field a little bit, because I think that's going to really open up the run game for Belevidere North. But as what they did collectively, it was a concerted effort on both sides of the ball. I think both Coach Beck and Coach Fagan did a phenomenal job of preparing those kids that week to get ready to go into Cary-Grove. And a lot of people would probably say, well, they got lucky. No, there was no luck in that game. They just outplayed Cary-Grove. And I don't think Cary-Grove was ready for that type of speed that Belevidere North displayed on Saturday afternoon when they went over there and stole that game 17-10 against Cary-Grove. Again, congrats to Belevidere North. Cary-Grove, you had a great season. Nothing to lament about, but you just ran into a Belevidere North team that was better that day.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it going into that football game. North had to get off to a hot start, and they did. They got 14 points early in that football game. They got a field goal before halftime, went up 17-0, and then they did what some people call old school football. I call it really intelligent football. What did they do? Yep. They took the air out of the football, and they forced and they pressured Cary-Grove to have to make plays that they weren't used to, because those teams played the exact same way. They run the football. They don't throw it all that much. They try to play really good defense. Cary-Grove let Alexander here get over the top of him. He was able to keep his feet and go for the distance. There's a scoop and score in that football game. And then, North does what they do. They don't turn the ball over. They don't commit penalties. They're a very intelligent football team, especially when they get ahead. If they get an early lead, they're a really tough team to beat. And I think Cary-Grove, again, I wasn't there, talked to a few people. I felt like the Cary-Grove players, they drove the ball down the field early in that football game, as you mentioned. They turned the ball over. North did a scoop and score all the way back. I think Cary-Grove was taken back by the fact that Belevidere North, they answered the bell. They were ready to play this football game. I think Cary-Grove thought that they were going to see that same Belevidere North team that they saw last year. And this is a whole different operation. This is a whole different football team. They are ready to go whenever they're called upon. Doesn't matter if it's Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the weather. This team is ready to roll. They are ready to play. Defense last week, Coach Fagan, tremendous game plan. Great job tackling by the front seven. I think that's the best tackling job I've seen on a front seven all year. All year, definitely for North. I'd say all year, the number of games I've watched. Just a great job. The back had 130 yards, but really he had enough carries that in a normal game for him, he's probably expecting 200 to 215 yards in that game. I mean, that not a lot of broken tackles, and then they got him to the ground. I mean, and the kid's going to go play at Arizona State. I mean, really first team All-State 5A running back. I mean, he had 1,400 yards on season. Just a great job defensively there.
Absolutely.
This game coming up this weekend, completely different mindset for North. They need to, again, get off to a good start, but they do need to control the ball more on offense. They need to be able to score and punch the ball in, because St. Francis, they score. They've only 2 out of their 12 games, they've scored less than 21 points. They average right about 34 points a game, and they average giving up 28 points a game. They do play a lot of closer games. So that is something that, North is going to have to somewhat play with, because they're used to lower scoring games. They might need to score in the 40s to win this game, high 30s, low 40s. That might not be something that they're comfortable with, but if they want to reach a state final, that's what they're going to need to do.
And I would agree. I think just, again, getting my naked eye on the game over Cary-Grove, that big victory of Cary-Grove 17-10 over the weekend, as I'm looking at the offense and I'm looking at, just the level of execution. I thought they ran the ball fairly well. I just think that, now moving forward into this semifinal game, I think you're going to need a little bit more from the offense. You're going to need the offense to dial in just a little bit more. You're going to need a little bit more productivity, so to speak, from the offense. I think defense, again, just looking at what defense did last week, just by stopping Cary-Grove's dominant run game. And you look at what Cary-Grove's been doing all year. They've been really run dominant. Obviously, they run the triple option. I think where Cary-Grove really ran into trouble, and I've watched the game a couple times, and that offense that they run, I don't know if that was something that, let me just say that if that offense that they run, it takes too much time off of the clock. You're down 14 zip, you're down 17-0, you're biting nails, try to come back, score, do something productive on offense. And, you stay on the ground. What's the clock doing, Harold? The clock's moving.
Yeah,
the clock's moving. Right, the clock's moving. So, in terms of, I like what they do offensively, but I just don't think they had enough balance, so to speak, in their offensive attack. I think, and that's why it's so important for teams that are run dominant, when you do get yourselves in pickles like that, to be able to have some type of passing game, an effective passing game. Doesn't have to be anything 5-star passing game, but it's got to be a passing game that it's going to allow you to be able to move the ball, move the chains, pick up first down, so to speak. And I think that's where Cary-Grove really truly ran into trouble with that Belevidere North defense. Yes, did the defense of Belevidere North play lights out? Absolutely. I'm not saying that they didn't, but as it pertains to Cary-Grove's style of offense, I really didn't like it, because I think it came back to bite them in the butt. Particularly in that second half, where they just really couldn't move the ball effectively as they wanted to. And when they got themselves in desperate down, so to speak, in 4th and 3s and, 3rd and 8s, that's all they could really do is just run the ball. They couldn't really attack the perimeters, at least test the actual DBs, so to speak, of Belevidere North. If you go back and you watch the game, I mean, there were times where they could have probably tested Belevidere North, because at times Belevidere North had almost 9 guys in the box, almost 9 guys in the box. But again, running that style of offense, I think it's a blessing and it's a curse, particularly when you're playing catch up. Now, if you're ahead by 2 scores, maybe you can actually get away with running that type of offense. But if you're behind 2 scores, I think you need to have some type of plan to be able to pass the game, something in that passing tree, again, where you can run some crossers, you can attack the perimeters, and maybe you can even stretch the field depending on what type of speed guys you have at those receiver positions. But again, kudos to Belevidere North, man. You can't take nothing away from that defense. They came and played, and they showed up and they showed out.
Yeah, to follow up with your point on what they run offensively and defensively, they know their kids, they know what they're going to run. So I did hear a couple of interviews with their coach after the game. He didn't feel like they handled the pressure of the situation, being down by that much. They didn't pick their pace up. He blamed it on himself as the coaches not getting the plays in fast enough. There was a point in the 3rd quarter into the 4th quarter, they had the ball for 8.5 minutes and they scored 3 points. If you're down by 17 points, you can't do that. You have to pick up the pace. You gotta go.
And Harold, that goes to my point that I just alluded to a second ago. You can't have that type of offense, and think it's going to be effective when you're down and you're biting your nails and you're down by 2 scores, and that's all you come up with is 3 points.
Well, yeah, Tim,
you've had the ball.
Also, on that same realm, like, you got to get the process needs to happen faster. You need to get more plays in there faster, and that's the thing that shocked me as I was watching the game. Their process of getting plays in and running more plays did not speed up. They stayed at the same pace. Even if they run the football, run more plays. And they didn't do that, and that's one of the negatives of that style of play.
Again, but my point is, Harold, the clock's still moving. The clock's still going. Okay, no matter how quick you get plays in and plays out, the clock's still moving. I'm saying if you had some sort of a passing game, a mediocre passing game, let's just put it out there. If you had a mediocre passing game, but you were actually attempting to throw the ball 8 to 10 times per game, but obviously you want the positive outcome of that. You want your receivers to come up big and you want to pick up first downs. But in their case, they couldn't stop the clock, and Belevidere North took advantage of that. They couldn't stop the clock because that's all they did was run, irrespective of getting the plays in and out quick or not. It could, because again, I'm looking at the game and I'm like, okay, well, why don't they just try a passing play? That way, they can stop the clock. If the receiver doesn't catch the ball, they can stop the clock, rehuddle, come back into the game and draw up a better play. Because I think, some of the things that they were drawing up, they were repeat plays. They were repeat plays, Abram up the middle, Abram up the middle, Abram up the middle, quarterback, try to attack the perimeters, him keeping the ball. He's not a dual threat guy. Obviously he's probably looked to me like he's a young kid that's really smart, understands how to facilitate the offense, doesn't make dumb decisions, and can really run that offense to the best of their abilities. But again, kudos to Belevidere North's defense for again stacking 9 guys in the box. Sometimes I saw 8 guys in the box, and all those kids came up big. There's one kid in particular that I want to actually illuminate here real quick, and he didn't really get enough credit this year, but he has had a one hell of a season. Number 11, Rooney. Rooney came up big for Belevidere North. If you go back and you watch that game, he was in on a lot of tackles, coming from the backside, and I think that's one thing that I can give that young man credit for. You see most high school games, particularly high school, you see guys from the backside loafing, not coming off the ball full speed because they think that the play is going away from them. They don't have to give 100%, but he did the antithesis of that. He actually ran to the ball each and every time and actually was able to come up with some TFLs, making some big tackles, some losses came up for Cary-Grove. Again, that's one kid that we really need to talk about, in this show tonight, because again, how he came up big for that defense of Belevidere North, man. That kid was special last Saturday.
Yeah, I know Coach Beck mentioned him in a couple of our conversations, and he's done that. He's an unsung hero that they have on their team. But you mentioned from coming in from the backside, he was able to clean up. Maybe if one guy had Abrams, and he's being dragged forward, Rooney came in and was able to drop him for a short game. Or I'm trying to remember back on the scoop and score if he was in on that play. I know he was around the ball quite a bit. But he did a great job coming in from the backside and really cleaning up and getting guys to the ground. I thought he did a great job of putting his helmet on the quarterback a ton after he did hand the ball off. I thought he beat up the quarterback within the rules, obviously, but I thought he did a really good job there. Again, a great game plan from Coach Fagan. Rooney executed it, I think, masterfully. And the same names that, we've talked about all year, needs to start to include Rooney because he's a fantastic player who does his job, and he did everything he needed to do in that game to help his team win. And he was there, he was there from his corner position as well. If they were going to throw the ball, they didn't, but he was in good position for that as well. He kept his head there. He could see the receiver. He was looking through the receiver to the quarterback to make sure the ball wasn't thrown. Once he could recognize that it was a handoff, he sprinted to the football, even if it was on the other side of the field. That's a great teaching tape for I'm sure the North coaches, and for Rooney, he should be very proud of the effort he gave to help them get that victory last week.
Yeah, and who's the I'm looking for it right now, the kid who picked up the scoop and score, because if you go back, I believe his last name was
I think it was
I'm trying to think of his name. I think it was Johnson. I believe that's who it was, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll come back to his name. If that's not correct, viewers, I'll come back and get his name correct. But anyway, my point that I'm getting ready to actually highlight, if you go back and you watch the game, the first person that had their hands on that football that probably should have gone in, scooped and scored, was Nathan Alexander. I don't know how close up. Did you freeze the game, Harold, by chance when they went in for the scoop and score? Because Nathan Alexander had it first.
Wasn't the greatest.
Alexander had it first, and he kind of muffled it, and it hit the ground. When it hit the ground or came up in the air as he was trying to actually bring it to his body, The other kid was just in the right spot at the right time. He picked it up, scooped and scored, and just ran the daylight. So again, it's good to see that all those 11 hats, all those kids were around the ball at that time. And that's what I mean. I think Belevidere North right now defensively is playing really great lights out defense. They're probably one of the best defenses in State 5, in the area. The way that they play very physical Saturday night. And I didn't think that Cary-Grove expected Belevidere North, undersized, but I don't think Cary-Grove expected that type of physicality coming from a Belevidere North team last Saturday.
No, they definitely did not in that football game. They did not think that. I think his name was Jackson Johnson. I believe it was Jackson Johnson. Jackson Johnson. He just, that was heads up by Johnson. It was heads up by Alexander too, because again, if you go back and you look at the game, there were blue shirts of Cary-Grove. There were bodies of Cary-Grove athletes around the ball, but I don't think they've seen it because, coaches always say, you hear the term, that was a heads up play. That was a heads up play. Well, Harold, that was a heads up play. Absolutely.
For those guys to be around the ball and to understand, okay, instead of not reacting, but reacting in the right way to where they actually put 6 points on the board, came in, kicked the extra point, went up 7-zip.
Yep. And what do coaches or really any football player always talk about? What don't you need? Effort and energy are two things that every human being has when you play football. Effort and energy. And both those kids, Alexander and Johnson, they had effort and energy. They were there. They played the defense. And Johnson picked up his teammate. Alexander couldn't get the ball, but the pickup is a great job by Scott here on the video.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Great shot. Yeah. Scott's the best in the business. Scott's the best in the business, man. That's to be expected. My man's always going to get good shots. Thanks for the footage, Scott, by the way, if you're watching.
Yeah, really appreciate that. That is perfect. I believe I saw that on some folks in the Chicagoland area on their social media as well. One of those was, I believe, Caleb Williams. I believe he did that.
Harold, again, just looking at, again, we're going to close on this. We're going to move on to the next topic, but what Belevidere North, man, very proud of that program, but what they were able to do going into Cary-Grove, man, it's hard to play on the road and win, particularly when you get this far in the playoffs, and they did it, in a great fashion. I thought it was a concerted effort on both sides of the ball. Coaches did a phenomenal job of just preparing those kids for the battle that they actually endured on Saturday. Harold, we're going to go ahead and continue to move forward. Let's discuss the next opponent that they'll see. They'll see St. Francis this weekend. It's a home game, semifinal home game. They'll see St. Francis. What do we know about St. Francis? And I can lead it off. I had an opportunity to see some film on St. Francis. Didn't see a ton of film, but enough to understand what they have and what their capabilities are, et cetera, et cetera. So, St. Francis, to me, they have a legit offense. I think they have a dual threat quarterback. I think he puts the ball in the air fairly well, very accurate, nice velocity on his ball when the ball leaves his hand. His offensive line gives him great protection. They have a good running game, and I think defensively, what they do defensively, I think you see all 11 hats running to the ball each and every down. What I would like to see Belevidere North do, I'd like to see Belevidere North really come out on fire with that running game on Saturday, because again, looking at some tendencies that St. Francis has on defense, I see a few guys taking plays off. I see a few guys really not wrapping up with tackles, and as well as I do, Belevidere North backs Bucci, Roman, Bucci, Roman. What did I say? Bucci Roman, and what's the other young man's name?
McKellen?
Bucci Roman. No, Bucci Roman. Booker.
Oh,
my main man Booker. Yeah, you get to going with Booker, Roman, Bucci. You don't want to leave anybody out. But the point that I'm making is that that these young men that I just alluded to are some of the best runners that we have in our league, and they can spring. They can bust big plays. They've been doing it all year. Particularly Booker. Roman has done a lot as well. Bucci's done a lot as well. But I look at the tendencies that St. Francis has, and I think Belvedere North's offensive attack has to really come out big on Saturday if they want to actually punch their ticket to the state game. But again, St. Francis is no slouch, nothing to sneeze at. I think they're going to come ready to play. They've scored offensive. They scored 411 points this season. And they play in a tough league. Chicago Catholic League, nothing to sneeze at. One of the renowned conferences throughout the country, in my estimation. But I think if Belvedere North is going to have a chance to be able to play with these guys, I think it's going to take another concerted effort. And then B, it's going to take that offense to really get hot and really set the tone if they want to actually make the trip to the first trip in school history to the state game.
Yeah, you mentioned their quarterback. His name is Brock Phillips. He's a senior. He's passed for 26 touchdowns on the year, ran for another 8. But this could play a part in the game. I actually think it might. He's thrown 8 interceptions in 12 games, so that he does make the ball available for turnovers. So that is something that could play a part in the game. He's thrown for about 2,300 yards on the season in just 11 games. He's been sacked about 7 times. I got to give a couple of the coaches on their schedule some assistance. I got earlier today. I got a nice email from them with some of the stats. So and I just opened it up before we came on. Nice. So
appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that, Tim. They have a really nice wide receiver as well. Daro Milivojek. It's Milivojevvic. Good luck on that one. He's caught 900 yards. He's got 14 touchdowns. He's already committed to Southern Illinois as a wide receiver. He's going to play there next year. He's tiny though. He's not big. He's 5'7", about $150. According to his recruiting profile, he runs about a 4.6, so fast enough. But yeah, he's they have some talented athletes there. They run something very different than I think Belvedere North has seen this year. They run the spread, but they want to pass the ball. They don't really want to run the ball as much. They look to pass. So they do what I call is kind of a fake run, but they're looking to pass the ball. They're not looking to run it. Yeah. I mean,
their quarterback. Well, their quarterback. He's not a dual threat guy. I mean, he can run it, but he's not gonna burn you for 60 or 70, 80 yards. Like a Bucci would. But I think just to add on what you're saying, Harold, is you go back and you look at how Belvedere North's run stop defense played last week. I think this week it's gonna change a little bit. I think a lot of their success on defense is going to be dependent upon how well their secondary plays, and then also too how much pressure those front 3 guys and those backers can get pressure on this quarterback.
Yeah, it's definitely a different way to play the game this week than last week. I would say if you're going to the game and you're thinking, okay, what can I compare their offense to? I am not saying that they are this team. However, they run offense very much like Oregon or Oregon, depending on where you're at in the country.
Fast pace.
Yeah, fast pace. But they also last year, like Dylan Gabriel, he wanted to pass the ball more than run it. That's what they do. That I would compare St. Francis to the style of Oregon offense last year. He faked it, but he wanted to pass the ball. He didn't fake it and really want to run it. He could, but he really wanted to pass the ball more. And I think that's what St. Francis does. Look, tackle for losses in this game is going to be a big thing. Getting that quarterback to the ground when he does, run the football and punish him. Yeah. When the wide receiver catches the ball, punish him. Not don't do anything dirty, but big physical plays so that maybe the next time he runs across the middle and Eric Roman is there, maybe he looks up and he just ball falls out of his hands. If the quarterback holds it and goes around the side, and Johnson, the corner, comes in and he drops the quarterback there. Maybe next time he tiptoes around the corner.
Yeah, there's gonna have to be really great defensive performance on Saturday for Belvedere North to slow these guys down. Again, I'm not putting pressure on the secondary, but I think the secondary will be tested, and hopefully I think they'll come up big. Williams has played really well all year. You got Booker back there; he's been playing well all year. Again, how well, and again, due to the type of play that we see in our Nick 10 league, we don't see a lot of the passing. We're not, only team that's really probably only two teams that are probably balanced in the actual passing game this year that we saw was mainly, you saw Harlem, had great balance. You saw Guilford had good balance. Boylan, when they were clicking, they had decent balance with Cacciatore, trying to complete some passes, but that was about it. So you only got about, not even a quarter of your league that really airs the ball out. So again, I'm pretty sure this week in practice, I'm pretty sure, they're trying to simulate, some of the things that St. Francis runs, offensively. And I think, a big focus this week, I'm pretty sure Coach Fagan's telling his DBs, hey, look, everybody needs to come up big, all 11 guys on defense, but particularly my DBs, I need you guys to come up big because they're going to try to test us in the air. I think everybody in the state knows what Belevidere North does really well defensively. They have a really solid run-stop defense. They're probably number one in the Nick 10 in run-stop defense. One of the better teams in the state as it pertains to being a great run-stop defense. But again, I think in the secondary, I think they're going to be tested. And I think they know that. I think they'll be up for the challenge. But it remains to be seen what type of productivity that we'll get from the secondary on Saturday night in order for them to be able to slow down that St. Francis offense and punch their ticket to the state final.
Yeah, one of the things that I was talking to a couple of the other coaches on their schedule this year is they talk about the fact that they have a hard time when noise impacts the game. So fan support for the game on Saturday is going to be super important for Belevidere North fans. Get out there, be loud. You can't once the team breaks the huddle, you can't have noisemakers or can't have music, but you as a fan can scream and yell and make all the noise you want. You can clap and scream and do anything else to disrupt the opposing team. I think that's going to play a part in this game. The more boisterous you are as a fan, the more impact you're going to make. Sometimes against teams like last week, Cary-Grove, I don't know that fans impacted the actual play. I think this week, because of the way St. Francis runs their offense, you'll notice they get up to the line, they'll get set to the line, and then the quarterback will turn and look to the sideline, and then want to do. Now, some of them are dummy calls, but some of them are live calls. You as a fan wouldn't know that, nor would anyone else. But you got to be boisterous as much as you can because you're going to impact the game. You're going to make St. Francis struggle to get that communication in. It will help the Blue Thunder if you come to the game Friday night and you do that. That's where a fan base can really help. And I would throw this out. Anybody in the Nick 10, I don't care if you're Freeport to Belevidere North, to Hononegah, to any of the Rockford schools, Guilford, East, Auburn. I know I missed somebody in there, Boylan. If you want to support, the Nick 10, come out to the game. Cheer for North. It's the last team we have in the playoffs. They're a game away from state. I hope that you have pride for the conference. Obviously, you would rather be playing, but have some pride for the conference. Come out there and support them, and watch a very highly skilled, highly talented football team in Belevidere North take on another very highly skilled and talented football team in St. Francis. It's the best. I think it's $5 or $6 to get in. It's the best $5 or $6 you're going to spend probably, I don't know, all month. I mean, what are you going to do? Throw
Harold, it's the holidays, man. It's the holidays. Everybody's tight, man. It's tight.
Look, I understand
I'm in total agreement with you. I don't think that we'll have to worry about that. I think a lot of these Nick 10 teams will support Belevidere North. So I don't think that's anything that we need to worry about. I think we'll have probably some teams from the outside the area too that are coming up. Just want to watch a really damn good football team as we're going to see on Saturday. Harold, I want to talk a little bit about Belevidere North offense, and we kind of started that already. Kind of talked about their defense. I want to actually move away from their defense for a little bit. And again, as I look at Belevidere North's offense, and I've seen the dominance of the run game all year. I've seen Coach Beck get out of his comfort zone, so to speak, and say, okay, let's test this team with the pass. What what should we expect to see in terms of balance, if there is any? If there is going to be any balance on Belvedere North offense on Saturday, what should we expect to see from that offense on Saturday when they come out to play and line up against St. Francis?
I think what you're going to expect to see is I think you're going to see a lot more weak side runs against this team. I think their defensive end on the right side of the defense would be left side of the offense. I think he's a little light. I think that they can do some things against him in this football game. So I think running the football to the edges, especially on the weak side or the back side, because I'm a right-handed person. So on the left side, I think you're going to see that. As far as passing the football, Alexander has to play a huge role in this game. I mean, he has to be the most dominant player on – I don't want to say the most dominant player on offense, but he has to dominate the guy he's playing against for sure. I think it's super important that Bucci feels comfortable throwing the ball to him in tight windows, tight spots. You know, if it's a quick slant or if it's over the top, either way, Alexander needs to be able to catch that football, and he needs to put a little bit of fear in that defensive back so that he and the defenders back up a little, which will then give the running game a little more room. I think that's something that I'm sure that Belvedere North, the coaches have talked about because they've looked at the secondary guys for St. Francis. They're all about the same size, same speed, same weight.
Quick guys.
Yeah, they're quick guys, but they're not big. They're not dominant. They don't have a dominant secondary from either the corners or the safeties. They have a nice inside linebacker. I believe he was second team all conference. In the Chicago Catholic League, so he's a nice player. But he's their middle linebacker, and he does most of his work in between the tackles. He'll make tackles on the outside, but it's not until 6-7 yards down the field. In the games that I've watched, I've not watched them all. I've watched a handful of them along the way, but I think that they need to take advantage of the edges, and you mentioned that before. Just they need to get on the edges. It would be helpful for them if they got chunk plays, and I call chunk plays at the high school level 7, 8, 10 yards. You're not very rarely you're going to see 10 and 20-yard runs.
Right. And just to piggyback on what you're saying, I think Belvedere North is just really going to have to control the clock offensively. Keeping that offense of St. Francis off the field, because again, if you go back and you look and see who St. Francis has played, particularly in that Catholic League, they beat St. Rita. Obviously, they lost to Loyola. They lost to Nazareth. But they beat some IC Catholic. I think they lost to IC Catholic as well. I think those are the 3 losses. But they really beat some really damn good football teams, and one in particular is Prairie Ridge.
Yep. Well, they were the number 1 seed coming into the playoffs in 5A. They were able to beat them 41-38. And in large part, I would say, because of the way they got started. They were up by double figures in that first quarter. When it flipped to quarter number 2, that's when Prairie Ridge really started to get rolling. And then, the momentum and confidence was already behind St. Francis, and they just did what they had to do to hold on and win that football game. But that was one of the bigger upsets, I think, this playoff season, was Prairie Ridge losing that early to St. Francis. But that tells you how talented this St. Francis team is. I mean, for them to go to Prairie Ridge, and Prairie Ridge has been either number 1 or number 2 all season long. I don't care what poll you look at, and including the playoffs here. So this is a formidable foe that Belvedere North has.
And I think the coaching staff over at Belvedere North, knowing Coach Beck the way that I know him, just in Coach Fagan as well, how these guys prepare, particularly this time of the season. You're asking your players to step their game up. As coaches, you have to prepare too. You have to be able to elevate your coaching skills. And I think they've actually exhibited that over the last 3 weeks. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, they have definitely elevated their coaching over the last 3 weeks. Just you can tell by the way the kids play and what they do and how they execute plays. The way Bucci is playing, is a direct result of the coaching he's getting. The way that the defense is playing is the way Coach Fagan is. The way that the overall team is playing, that's Coach Beck, right? We know that he's pretty mild-mannered, calm guy for the most part on the sidelines, and his team is playing that way. Even if they get down by a score, they're bouncing right back. Yeah. But they do have to stay close early in this one to St. Francis, because St. Francis reminds me of like the Kentucky Derby winners. They get way out front and they just hold on at the end. that's what St. Francis is. They are. I don't want to call them a front runner, but if that's what you want to call them, so be it. Right. They get out in front and they're able to hold on and win a game. So right. Belvedere North has to stay within striking distance in this one.
Yeah, and just really establishing that, as I alluded to earlier in the show, just really establishing that running game early. Getting Booker going, and then getting Bucci going, and then also to Roman, getting those guys going. And I think you can get those guys going at the same time. I think St. Francis is in for a tough fight, because again, obviously we know last week, I don't know, viewers out there may not have seen the game, but Booker came up limping. I believe in the second quarter. I forget what it was, a toss sweep or a jet sweep that they ran to him, and he came up kind of gingerly. I think it was right hamstring. So it's going to be interesting to see how well he's been able to actually bounce back this week. Is he practicing? Obviously, we don't know that. Hopefully he is. Hopefully he's back to 100%, because you would hate to see them lose that type of star player on offense and defense as well. But I know they do have some other players that can step up, that can actually maybe not completely 100% fill the shoes of Booker, so to speak, but be able to cover those tracks in some capacity. So it's going to be interesting to really see, is Booker back out there on the field, and then also too, is his play time, is it now going to be finite? Or is it going to be as it's been all season, where he's playing at 100%? So it's going to be really interesting to see him out there on Friday. I'll have my eye on him to see, is he gimping? Is he coming up gingerly on certain plays? Does he have that burst as we've seen all year? I'll be looking at things like that. The way he's accelerating as he comes downhill and he turns that corner. Is he able to do that at full tilt? Something that I'll have my naked eye on Saturday.
Yeah,
hopefully he's healthy.
I definitely think it's a benefit for Belvedere North to be playing Saturday instead of Friday night. Give them an extra 12 to 14 hours to recuperate. And I'm sure he's doing everything, and the staff is doing everything to kind of get him ready and get him prepared. And I've not heard an update or anything like that regarding Ben. Knowing Ben like we do, that kid's putting in as much work as he can to be ready for that game on Saturday. He wants to play with his boys one more time. He doesn't want to be sitting on the sidelines. He doesn't want to not contribute for his team. That I have full confidence in. I just hope he's well enough to play in that football game to make an impact.
But I like the coaching adjustment that Coach Beck made. I mean, obviously they knew that he came up gingerly with the hamstring, and they didn't want to push it, didn't put him back in the game. But I don't know if you witnessed it, but he didn't come back in the game in the second half. I don't think he came back at all after he came up gingerly. I didn't see him out there on defense or offense. So, again, where he is right now in terms of his health, is he at 100%? Is he at 50%, 60, 80? We don't know that, but I wouldn't be surprised, again, with a really great training staff that they have over there at Belvedere North, allowing him to heal up and ensuring that, you put a caliber of athlete in the game, a big game like this, you got to make sure that he's ready to go, because again, you go to that state game and he's not ready at 100%, then, what went wrong? Where was the miscommunication at? Should he have played, or should he have sat? So again, there's some tough decisions that are going to probably have to be made, or probably already have been made over there at Belvedere North in terms of his capacity. How will we use him? How will we use our star, our main man, Ben Booker, on Saturday remains to be seen. So hopefully he's out there.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see he does play, what side of the ball he's more leaning toward. Is it defensively playing the center field position at safety that he normally plays, or are they going to use him on offense to try and get him outside and have him go for a long run? I think that's going to be an interesting kind of little side note there. I know you mentioned you'll be watching those types of things. That's of interest to me as well. I think that, Belvedere North's going to do the correct thing for Ben. They understand, who he is, what he is. And, I have all the confidence in the world that he'll play in the game. Now, to what capacity?
Remains to be seen.
Remains to be seen. Training staff will be there. I hope the field is not wet. I know that I think we're supposed to get some overnight showers coming up here next couple of days. Hopefully the field, drains well and it's good there. Because that obviously with a hamstring, that causes more issues and all of those types of things. Tim, you would know that much more than me. I really have never been a sprinter. You obviously
right.
Right. So
Yeah. I don't think the surface is going to play an issue. Not in my estimation. I think Belvedere North will be fine. They're probably out practicing in it all week. Despite the the brisk weather that we're having this week, normally if there's snow on the ground, in the past, they've come over to our facility, Mercy Health, sports complex. They've come over there a few years when they've been in the playoffs and, came inside just to get away from the actual inclement weather. But I think this week, I think the weather's really been on their side. They've been able to out in those elements that they're going to play in. I think that's the best way to do it. If you can prevent from coming inside as you prepare for a game that you're going to be playing outside in inclement weather, I think that's a bonus for teams to be able to just practice in that weather if that weather is conducive to going out and being able to practice that week before you get ready for the semifinal game.
Yeah, I agree. Getting used to that weather, playing in it, understanding what the field conditions are as much as you can before the game that's definitely helpful. And I believe St. Francis, I believe that they also play on grass, but I might be mistaken on that. So I don't think I don't know that it's going to play.
St. Francis, what I saw in film, St. Francis, they're on turf.
They are on turf. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Turf field. So, right. But I think at this point in the game, grass, turf, doesn't matter. You got to go out. You got to perform, irrespective of what type of surface you're playing on. You just got to go out and you got to be at your best, So I think we're going to see that on Saturday. I think Belvedere North, as it pertains to Belvedere North as well, I think special teams wise, they're going to have to come up big because if you go back and you watch some film on St. Francis, they have some guys that can return some kicks and some punts as well. So, guys are going to have to, stay on their assignment, just under, wrap up, again, you did that. You did a damn good job, wrapping up Abrams from Cary-Grove last week. So I'm assuming, you guys are still practicing that this week. We tackle, we take away guys' legs. We do not challenge anybody from the waist up. That's just a waste of time. So, again, I think special teams is another realm where Belvedere North is really going to have to be able to capitalize. When St. Francis goes 3 and out, the ball's in the air. Usually they have Williams and, Booker back deep. 2 guys back deep, 2 of their best athletes back deep. Hopefully one of those guys can take one to the house, because again, I think they're going to need it. I think offensively, they're going to be able to do some things offensively. I think, also too offensively, what's going to determine their fate, in this game, I think it's how well of a balanced offense do we see on Saturday? Are we seeing one-dimensional or are we seeing a more balanced offense that's run a variety of plays and not a lot of the things that you've been running all year? Because I think this time of the year in the playoffs, I think you're running into better teams. Coaches can scout better. Coaches understand your tendencies and your strengths better. So you're going to have something in your playbook to where you can actually implement that play to where it's going to be effective, to where you're going to actually be able to capitalize on a defense such as you'll face on St. Francis on Saturday.
Well, yeah, and kind of to follow up with that, St. Francis head coach is Bob McMillan. He played in the Arena Football League for a number of years, and in the last, 3 games or so, he's pulled out a couple different plays. He pulled out what I call the Kansas City Chief tight end play, where the tight end comes in motion and they actually pitch it to him, and he got a short game on that. Last week, their first play on offense, they lined up one of their offensive guards in the backfield and they handed it to him. He went for like a 25-yard gain. He was breaking all kinds of tackles and stuff. So they do pull out some things. They're right. Definitely a non-conventional offense at times. But look, North has seen those, and they understand what their keys are and who their keys are and where they're at. So they do go jumbo line sometimes. They bring in an extra offensive lineman to run the football if they want to. I've seen that on a couple different pieces of highlights, more near the goal line than anywhere else.
Right.
And they do have their version of the tush push on 3rd and 4th short. So,
Right.
all those types of things are something that I think are just interesting notes to make note of when the game comes. But it's going to come down to, can North's offense control the clock and get enough from the passing game to allow their running game to control that clock.
Yeah.
I think Bucci needs to throw for over 100 yards.
Yeah, I think, I won't say over 100 yards. I have to disagree with you on that. I think, when he gets his opportunities, Harold, I think he just needs to be effective. When he gets his opportunities, he can't throw the ill-advised balls. You've seen him do a lot. You've seen him do some of that this year, not a lot of it. But he just needs to be effective. I think if he can be effective and just limit the ill-advised passes to where he either overthrows a guy or underthrows a guy, or tries to do something that's not within the game plan, so to speak, I think he's going to be okay. I think if Bucci can actually pass for 75 or 80 yards, man, that's a slam dunk for Belevidere North. That's a huge bonus. If he throws over 100, hey, great. But I think most importantly, I think he's going to just really have to be effective, no matter how many attempts as he gets. He may only get 6 or 7 attempts. The point that I'm trying to actually shed some light on is that how effective was he in those 6 or 7 attempts that he had? Can he go 6 for 6 if he only gets? Can he throw 50%, complete 50% of his passes? Remains to be seen. I think he can do it. I think he's just going to have to be poised and trust himself, and also too trust Alexander is going to come up big, because if you look at any tape on Belevidere North, who's their go-to receiver?
Well, it's Alexander. I mean, that's who it is.
He's their bread and butter in the passing game. Okay. Now, I think this week they need to add somebody else into that passing game if they expect to come out on top and beat St. Francis and punch their ticket to the next round, which is the state final. Because again, I think St. Francis, they saw film against when they played Cary-Grove, and you go back and you look at the game. Yeah, he attempted some other passes. I think Bucci was like 1 for 2 or 1 for 3. But my point that I'm trying to make is that you know who his favorite target is, and if St. Francis is smart, if he's lined up in a tight end spot, which he was, where he caught his 71-yard TD reception and ran it in for a touchdown, he was lined up at the tight end position. They lined him up there. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're a defensive coordinator, you saw that, you say, okay, whoever your edge guy is, okay, let's get our hand on him and slow him down when he comes off the ball. Because if we can do that, we give our front guys enough time to get to the quarterback. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. You definitely want to. If you have a receiver or a smaller guy on the edge, you definitely want to get your hands on him and reroute him.
If you go back and you watch the film, that's all. He ran a basic route. He ran a go route. He ran the easiest route in the route tree. He ran a go route. If you go back and you look, the safety bit, Booker did a phenomenal job of carrying out a fake. Went up as he does when he carrying out his fakes, throughout the weeks for the Nick 10 that I've covered those games. The safety was center of the field. He bit. He came up. By the time he came up, he wasn't quick enough or athletic enough to open his hips to actually close. By that time, Alexander had already caught the ball. He was already 10 yards upfield. So again, a good defensive coordinator is going to recognize that wherever Alexander goes, if he's lined up in that tight end position, guys, we gotta get initial contact. We got to throw him off of his route right away. Make him get back on his route. Don't let him get into the top of his route, because if he gets into the top of his route, whatever it is, in, out, go route, if he gets there, he's a really good target. He's every bit of 6'2", and he has great leaping ability. That could be very daunting for St. Francis if he gets loose and Bucci gets hot on Saturday evening.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I'd be surprised if St. Francis didn't look at, I'd say the Harlem game. That's probably the one they're going to want to look at, or the Gopher game, as we mentioned a couple times. They play closer to the style of what St. Francis plays, both offensively and defensively. I think those are the things. I think moving around Alexander is definitely going to be something that should help.
Oh yeah, you have to move him around, because you have to give defenses just a different look each and every down. I'm giving the defense a different look. Alexander may line up wide. He may line up in the slot. He may line up at tight. Sometimes if I'm an offensive coordinator, he may line up in the backfield. I want to keep that defense guessing. And I think Coach Beck's going to draw up some really, really great plays. If he hasn't already, drop a really good offensive game plan to actually keep that St. Francis defense guessing. Are they going to pass or are they going to run? Are they going to pass or are they going to run? I think if they do that, I think we could see Belevidere North marching into that state game the weekend of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I feel like this is a really good matchup for North. I think what they do well, St. Francis struggles with just a little bit. Again, I'm going to go back to my point I've said a few times. North needs to get off to a good start. They can't let St. Francis get too far out in front. They need to stay. They need to either be ahead or be close. Because I think North will have a hard time coming back if they get down. St. Francis, they like to play from ahead. They like to feel that comfort of, hey, we got space between us and the opponent. They can do some things then offensively, maybe that's a little bit outside their comfort zone. In the passing game, maybe they throw to the backside slant a little bit more then, or a backside out, those types of things that and their offensive line, it's okay. It's not a great offensive line. I would say it's not the best that North has faced all season long. I think a couple of the teams in the Nick 10 are much better up front. But look, their skill position players are what they are. They're a nice collective group. Nobody is top level elite talent, and North secondary has to do their job. They have to tackle. They have to get kids to the ground. And anytime they get the opportunity to pound those receivers or hit the quarterback. Make him feel.
And again, as we close here, man, we've talked about their offense. We talked about their defense. We've kind of flirted around with different notions of what they'll have to do. Harold, to be honest with you, man, it's going to take a concerted effort. From everybody on that team. Starting with practice this week. Because those scout team guys, man, they're important. Some of these kids that may not get a lot of playing time, they don't understand how crucial they are to the actual number one guy's success out there on Fridays and Saturdays. So again, you're looking at how they prepared, and then also to what type of maturation have we seen, not only from our starters, but also to our guys that may not play a lot, because those are the guys that are simulating the St. Francis's. Those are the guys that are simulating the Cary-Groves. Mm-hmm. Those are the guys that are simulating Canelands. And so far, these past 3 weeks, I would have to say, I haven't been there, but I would have to say, based on what we've actually witnessed over these last 3 weeks from Belevidere North, their second, third team guys that are simulating these teams' plays have done a damn good job. So hopefully this week they've done the same thing.
Well, they've done good enough job to make them undefeated, right?
Yeah, but it's going to take
undefeated.
Yeah, but it's going to take that type of effort. It's going to take a collective effort. We can sit here all day and say, Bucci has to do this, Booker has to do this, Roman has to do this, Alexander has to do this. The other guys have to do this. But at the end of the night, it's a team game, and I think if when you're looking at what's at stake here, it's going to take a collective effort. I don't know how many guys they carry on their team, but if it's 30 guys, all 30 guys have to be on a different level this week. Because again, you look at how they got here, look at how many years it took them to get here. First time in school history. You look at all those things and you say, wow, this is the golden opportunity for us. We're at home. We get a home game, semifinal game at home. There's so many things that are going in their way right now that I think if they can come out, they execute, they've had a great week of practice. They get great rest Friday night. Watch some film Friday, maybe get up Saturday morning, watch a little film. By that time, a lot of coaches probably already was saying, well, by that time, you better know your opponent by Friday. And they may know their opponent already. But my point that I'm getting at is that it's going to take a concerted effort from all 30, 35 guys or 40 guys, however many they carry on their team. Because if they've done that and they've done their homework and they watched their film, I think we're going to see a damn good football team on Saturday night as they go up against a really damn good football team in St. Francis.
Yeah, I second that notion. I think look, we know Coach Beck, we know that staff, we know those kids. They're going to be prepared. They're going to be ready for a fight on Saturday night. And from what we can see from St. Francis, it's going to be a great one. Look, you're in the state semifinals. Everybody is good. Every team is good now. You're the one. You're what did I see? One of 8 or 10 teams left in the entire state. You know, it might be more than that. It might be 12. I don't remember the number, but you're a damn good football team at this point, and it is going to take the number 1 guy to the number 50th guy. You know, everybody on that team is going to need to be ready for Saturday. And what a great experience for these kids, for the community, for the Nick 10 conference. I love the fact that it continues.
It's huge, man. It's huge. Yeah. It's huge. It's huge for our conference. You know, it's big. It's very important that our teams in our conference, they try to go as far as they can each and every year, man, because, you know, the further you go, the more recognition our conference gets. The Nick 10 gets more and more recognition. When you get more and more recognition, you know, college scouts begin to actually look a little bit more your way than actually in some other leagues in that, you know, in the surrounding area. Again, you know, so I think every coach in our league knows that. But, you know, again, good luck, Belevidere North, this weekend. You know, play hard, play well, play smart. You know, again, you know, you only get this opportunity once in a lifetime, man, at the high school level. You know, the semifinal, then you get an opportunity to maybe play in the state game based on how well you perform Saturday night. So, you know, let it all hang out, Belevidere North. Harold, that's a wrap, my man. We're going to go ahead and get out of here.
Hey, can I give a quick shout? I want to give a quick shout out.
Go ahead.
Matt Trollbridge. Quick shout out to Matt Trollbridge. He was he's going to be inducted into the Illinois High School Basketball Association Hall of Fame. A well-deserved honor for a great man and a great writer. You know, he was part of this for many, many years. Also, a couple of teams over there at Rock Valley College, the 2015 and 2017 Division III NJCAA national champions also will be going in. So kudos to them. I know it's not Nick 10 related per se, but hey, kudos to those folks for getting in. And we know Matt. We know the great guy that he is.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, Harold, hey, man. Hey, I'll be there this weekend, man. I know you said you wouldn't be able to make it out to the game, but I'll fill you in. Feel free to text me, call me. Halftime, I'll give you updates like I usually do, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be communicating during the game. You know, I'll be on a sideline on my own. So, yeah, I'll definitely do that. So,
yep. Again, go Belevidere North. Harold Bone, Rockton Roscoe News, everybody.
Take care.
Talk to you soon. Yep. Yeah, folks, another great show in the books. Good luck, Belevidere North. This weekend is St. Francis comes to your field, your home field, and tries to come in and steal a victory. Guys, real quick, just make sure you guys, again, go follow, go like Bailey Pod. You can find a Bailey Pod every week via YouTube. Again, via YouTube during the weekday, Thursday at 6 p.m. Make sure you guys click that bell so you can be notified also, too. Guys, before I let you go, I just try to leave every night with some type of inspirational words. I mean, right now, you know, there's a lot, like I stated last week, going on in our world. I think it's important that, you know, we look at different ways of coming together, partnering, you know, talking to one another, looking at doing things in a collective manner instead of doing things unilaterally, and just really understanding, you know, we're all one. You know, we're all one. You know, everybody is actually wanting the same thing, and that's prosperity. I think all of us want to be successful. You know, there may be some things that have happened today to somebody where, you know, you think it's the end of the world or the end of the day, and you know, you don't know what else to do. You know, you come back tomorrow. You know, because again, as I've always said, and I always leave you with this: if you didn't get it done today, you have an opportunity tomorrow. But always remember, you can always better your best. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for joining the Bailey Pod. We'll catch you here next week as we cover our 4th week of our playoff edition. Again, the Belevidere North Blue Thunder, again, up against Saturday, St. Francis of the Chicago Catholic League. Good night, everybody. Appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.